Thank you, Victor, for joining us with this interview. I guess my first question is, what is your assessment of the China market? We've seen some issues like the China-Sino-US trade war, for example, a little bit of slowdown in the China market. How are you looking at this?
Yeah, I think that is across all industry. I think there is some macro overhang. For travel industry, I think it's been relatively okay. So a case in point would be sort of the recent October travel holiday. I think overall it's still growing quite healthily, but it's all relative to what people are expecting in terms of growth, right? The recent October travel holiday, I think the industry still deliver about 9% year-on-year growth, right? So, when you're looking at 9% relative to other parts of the world in terms of travel spend, that is very, very good, right? So I think overall it's still holding up okay, but it's a bit softer than historic kind of growth trends. But we're still quite optimistic about the opportunity. I think, in terms of Chinese traveling overseas in particular, there's potential impact by foreign currency fluctuations and such. So we've seen these different cycles before, but historically it usually bounce back quite fast. And then I think secondly, Chinese traveling overseas, there's more and more destinations that they could travel to, right? More countries are allowing Chinese to have easier visa applications. When they apply visa, it's longer tenure. More and more countries and cities have direct flights linking up with more cities within China, making outbound travel easier and shorter as well. Right, so there's more and more choices out there.
Right, so you're optimistic about the market continuing to gain momentum.
Yes.
Yeah. What are some of the initiatives that we will see Seatrip take?
Yeah, very busy. There's quite a lot of initiatives within our group, right? I could point to a couple of different things. I think one thing that Seatrip has been doing over the last 19 years is, building on this travel product capability, right? Today, in terms of our travel product offerings, it's the most comprehensive in the world, right? In a sense, we're the super app for travel. If you want to look for destination contents, you want to look for flights, you want to look for hotels, you want to look for alternative hotels, you need train tickets, car pickup, restaurants, amusement park, day tours, package tours, anything and everything on our app you could find. So we're the super app for travel. And one thing that's very interesting and that's growing very well is the end destination component, right? Many users already book flights and hotels through Seatrip, but now we're seeing a lot of our users opening up our app when they're in their non-home base. So for example, myself, I'm based in Shanghai and I'm in Singapore. I will be opening up the Seatrip app to look for my itinerary, or maybe oftentimes now looking for restaurants, or I want to book a amusement park ticket to Universal Studio. Right? These are all very accessible now for our user base once they land in destination to open up the Seatrip app to find the right information, user reviews, and booking capabilities. So actually, during certain times, about 40% of our traffic are users opening up our app in the non-home-based destination. Right, so we've been seeing tremendous kind of diversification in terms of how users are using Seatrip. Now they're using Seatrip throughout their whole itinerary. So that's been an important kind of initiative for us to continue to push, particularly when users are traveling overseas. So we're expanding more and more things to do capabilities overseas. So that's kind of one initiative. Another important initiative is also our deeper cooperations with many of the global hotel chains, right? These are, we put out press releases related to partnerships related to Accor, or recently Hyatt Hotels, and many other kind of global hotel chains where we're working with them on a deeper basis. On one front is helping them build brand in China, targeting Chinese users. So they're opening up their flagship stores, right? And I think this is important. Seatrip is the premier partner for them because we represent the strongest kind of premier travel base, right? The mid-high-end user base we represent a lot of this, and these global hotel chains want to leverage Seatrip to build brand recognition through flagship stores. And many of these users, they travel domestically, stay at these global hotel chains, but eventually, and more, they're traveling overseas. So they want to leverage Seatrip to help them build this brand credibility, right? So a lot of deep cooperation with global hotel chains is something that we've been pushing quite a bit lately as well. So that's another initiative, yeah.
Let me just go back to super app, because you're a super app now. So how much more super can it be? So what kind of technologies, for example, are you looking at?
Yeah. So there's a lot of products and services on our platform. I mean, if you're looking for flights, there's over 3 million flight routes that you could choose, domestically in China or internationally. If you're looking for hotels and hotel chains, we have over 1 million, about 1.4 million kind of hotel inventory available. If you're looking for vacation rental, alternative accommodation, we have over 1 million additional listings. So there's many, many different things. So what we're trying to do is, through Seatrip, we capture a lot of data, right? On a daily basis, we generate over 50 TBs of highly travel-related data. So we're doing a lot of personalization, right? And this really starts from, the top of the funnel, user browsing behavior to booking behavior, right? Many users leverage Seatrip to book flights. So we have this feature where a user can book, in one order, a couple of flight seats for their family. So we can pick up on that data. And once the user booked that flight for the family, obviously, more likely than not, that user will need to find a place to stay. Then we'll start optimizing the hotels that are family friendly, because we have pretty deep cooperation with the hotel in terms of the descriptors of each room, the contents, and we're able to kind of leverage these data to personalize and makes that user experience very seamless, and also for our partners, better conversions as well.
Personally, though, what do you think will or who will disrupt or be the biggest disruptor in the travel industry going forward?
We need to, stay ahead of the pack. I think we have a pretty good recipe in place, right? Travel booking can be very time consuming, right? So if you have everything in one app, right, and make it seamless, I think that's a value for users, right? Flights, hotels, cars, restaurants, shopping, amusement park ticketing, these are all throughout the itinerary. If you could seamlessly, in a personalized way, present this to the user, I think there's a great value. It could save them a lot of time, right? We have vast amount of choices. So we differentiate on that. We need to continue moving fast, right? And making, being able to predict what our users want, right? And in a more personalized way. I think we also differentiate quite a bit in terms of our service capabilities. Oftentimes travel, you need to change the itinerary because of personal reasons. Your itinerary gets canceled because of typhoons or natural disasters, or travel supply chain is very fragmented. It's not any platform runs into problem. You book a hotel, but there's no room, right? So with Seatrip, I think we differentiate through the years, have been investing through the years to have service capabilities. We have over 13,000 call center service there, 24/7 ready to, service users whenever they call. When you call, over 90% of the calls are picked up within 20 seconds, right? It's usually in those emergency situations that when users call, and when you have service capability, that's when you can really establish, trust and loyalty, long term. So, certainly we have an advantage in these kind of components, but we're not, we continue to invest in on these fronts to make sure we stay ahead of the pack. But on a whole, I think travel is still a very big market opportunity, right? In China, we did about 88 billion of gross merchandise value and travel transactions, already one of the world's biggest, right? But relative to the whole China travel spending, it's about 800, 900 billion USD, right? So we're about 10% penetrated in China. overall online spend for travel is less than 20% penetrated. So within China, there's tremendous opportunity, but also internationally, right? It's a very fragmented spend, right? Asia Pac, different markets in Asia Pac have very, different travel leaders in their own respective space. I think we have a pretty unique recipe and value proposition in the super app, travel super app, and service capabilities that we want to also step-by-step bring into those markets. And this is through our global brand called Trip.com, our global OTA brand. So that's very exciting. A lot of work ahead for us.
So Trip.com is part of your global growth strategy, right? Tell us a little bit more what's happening, what progress you're making with Trip.com.
Yeah. So it's been making very good inroads, right? I think on one front, Trip.com has the benefit to leverage Seatrip Group scale, right? Seatrip Group in China, of course, we have the widest and most comprehensive, most competitive price supply chain. Globally, I think step by step we're stronger and stronger. And this is really leveraging the Chinese outbound. We bring a lot of Chinese traveling overseas, then naturally the global suppliers will be linked up with us more and more directly, right? And Trip.com can really leverage that scale to be able to, they don't need to go and build their own supply chain, negotiate, their own price points, right? They could leverage that to give it advantage to, local users, right? So Trip.com right now is offering about 14 languages. Some of the key markets are Korea, Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore, Australia, Russia, are some of its key markets, more Asia-Pac focus. And it's growing very well, right? Leveraging the Seatrip Group supply chain power, so it has broad amount of flight route choices, hotel choices to offer its users, right, at competitive rates. So it's been growing well off of that. And then, the next step for Trip.com is increasing the number of product offering, right? So recently, Trip.com has been launching car services. So for people who book a flight through Seatrip, they need someone to pick them up from airport to hotel, right? So we're offering more and more of these capabilities. Train services, once they land in destination, they want to do intercity travel. They can book, like Korea Rail or UK Rail, et cetera, through Trip.com. And very recently, we started launching things to do, right? So when users are in destination and are looking for, I just landed in Singapore, what can I do? What should eat in Singapore, or what amusement park to go see? What are the top historic sites, right? We have more and more of these capabilities available through Trip.com now for local users, right? So that's very exciting, yeah.
How do you, or do you try to differentiate Trip.com and Seatrip?
Yes, very, very differentiated. It piggybacks on certain Seatrip Group resource it could get, but at the end of the day, we're targeting a very different non-Chinese user base, right? So we have small teams on the ground in each market that does a lot of localization work. So some of this may be, for example, payment. Payment is important kind of piece, right? So we're working with local payment providers in each market to let local users have easier payment, to enable easier payments. In certain markets, like in Japan, our Trip.com Japanese team are working with Mitsui Sumitomo Bank to do a co-branded credit card, where Japanese users can sign up for this credit card. When they spend on this credit card, they accumulate loyalty points for Trip.com that they can use for their travel, right? So that's a localization. In Singapore, our team is working with Singaporean hotels to target Singaporean users. Singapore is a big outbound travel, right? But sometimes they don't need to go outbound. We're working with Singapore hotels to promote staycation, where Singaporean users now have more choices. They don't need to travel overseas. They could, find good deals through Trip.com and have a staycation experience in Sentosa or, different parts of Singapore, right? So these are all kind of local elements that each and every kind of local team are are putting their heads around and thinking.
Okay, yeah. So localized, although it leverages on Seatrip.
Yes, yes. The experience will be completely different in terms of what a Chinese user on a Seatrip app sees and Trip.com interfaces. It's a completely different team and completely different experience. And the back end, of course, we benefit, Trip.com benefits from the scale of, Seatrip Group already linking up to many suppliers and having competitive prices. So it'll optimize off of that supply chain capability for its users.
Just one last question. What do you think would be the biggest learning so far from Trip.com?
I think it's a step-by-step process, right? I think operating in different, more and more markets, it requires patience, right? Each market has different regulations, different entrenched players, different user behaviors. A Korean user in terms of, their needs for a flight or a hotel can be very different from Chinese, and how do you optimize on that? So it does take time, and I think we're committed for the long run, right, to build roots in these markets, and yeah.
So another super app.
Step by step, we think travel is a very heavy kind of experience, right? Planning a 1-week trip can be very time consuming. So if you have everything organized in one platform that is mobile enabled, and it's trusted, there's a lot of choices, competitive price. It saves a lot of time from a user standpoint. We've seen a lot of feedbacks in terms of net promoter scores, that because of our one-stop shop super app capabilities, we won a lot of kind of good scores off of that. So feedback from users have been good on that basis.